We keep talking about de-dollarization. The name explains the concept. You take the dollar from the global economy. But what comes after that? Ideally, other currencies grow in stature. Like a multipolar world, it becomes a multi-currency market. The Indian rupee is trying to do that. It's a heavyweight in most of South Asia, but beyond that, the rupee doesn't have much influence. The Indian rupee makes up just 1.6% of global trade. There is a growing chorus to expand that. Last year, the State Bank of India made the first pitch. It said, it's time to internationalize the rupee. Now, a panel of the Reserve Bank of India has done the same. It has given recommendations on how to internationalize the rupee. So let's look at three important questions. When does a currency become international? How can the rupee achieve it? And what are the challenges? An international currency is like a popular teenager in school. You're in high demand. Consider the US dollar or the euro. Most countries use these currencies to trade. They also hold them in their reserves. So demand is key. When your currency has widespread demand, you can say it's international. Question number 2, how can the rupee achieve it? The RBI panel has suggested short-term and long-term policies. In the short term, the policy sounds quite simple. Use more rupees to trade. Maybe start with India's neighbors who already use the currency. Bhutan and Nepal use the rupee as a designated foreign currency. Sri Lanka did the same in 2022. So the idea is to use more rupees in regional trade. But the long-term solution is more complicated, like allowing Indian banks to open offshore branches, or harmonizing India's tax regimes, or using the RTGS for international transactions. You may have heard of it, RTGS. It transfers money from one account to another in real time. But one policy suggestion stands out, including the rupee in the special drawing rights basket, the SDR, special drawing rights. Quick side note, the SDR is the reserve held by the International Monetary Fund. It's like backup money. The SDR is a basket of 5 currencies, the US dollar, the euro, the Chinese yuan, the Japanese yen, and the British pound. Now, the suggestion is to include the Indian rupee in this basket, the SDR basket. Many experts say this will be a long process. It's not something which can be done overnight, which brings us to the final question. What are the challenges? There are 2 major ones. One is India's small export footprint. Like I said, you have to be like that popular kid in school. Other countries must be demanding you. And why would they do that? If they wanted to buy your goods or services. Let me show you an example, a list. China makes up 12% of all global exports. The US makes up 10%, Germany 7%, the UK 3.6%. Now look at India. Just 2.4% of global exports. If there is no demand for Indian goods, countries will not use the rupee. Simple as that. But there is some good news too. India's exports are on a good trajectory. They were worth $375 billion in the year 2010, $375 billion. This year, they're expected to reach $770 billion, so exports have doubled. Challenge number 2 is convertibility. What does that mean? When you travel abroad, you may convert some rupees into dollars. That's convertibility. But there are different levels to it. Some currencies are fully convertible. In that case, the government won't interfere in your business. You can convert large sums of money into another currency as much as you want. Typically, these are developed economies. Now, there is no official list of fully convertible currencies, but these 4 appear on all the lists. The dollar, the euro, the pound, the yen. They are all fully convertible. Others, like the Indian rupee and the Chinese yuan, are partially convertible, meaning there are exchange limits. You can't just convert massive sums as you wish. The government sets a limit on how much you can convert. And then there are currencies that are non-convertible, like the North Korean won. Now, if you notice, the fully convertible ones are international currencies. And why is that? Because they are easier to buy and sell. Why would anyone use a currency that is hard to exchange? There is talk of making the Indian rupee fully convertible, but it's a tricky decision. The central bank cannot control a fully convertible currency. It's up to the market then. Right now in India, the RBI intervenes to keep the rupee stable. If it becomes fully convertible, you cannot do that. Another problem is volatility. Easier to convert also means easier to move. Foreign investors could pull out capital in the blink of an eye. Such shocks could affect the Indian market. So economists are asking India to be patient, to first build the requisites for a fully convertible currency, like a bigger export base, a higher per capita income, a more equitable wealth distribution, and more financial market maturity. Simply put, This is a developed economy's game. India is learning the ropes right now. Rest assured, the rupee's time will come. Now let's turn our attention to Japan. It is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. Japan plans to release radioactive water into the Pacific Ocean. It is treated, but it's radioactive nonetheless. And Japan wants to release more than 1 million tons of such water. For perspective, 1 million tons would fill some 500 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So that's a lot of water. It came from the Fukushima nuclear disaster. There was a tsunami more than a decade ago. It hit the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, and since then, Japan has had this radioactive water. Now they're all set to release it, and the world is not thrilled about it. Japan's neighbors are complaining. They say it will harm the environment, but Japan insists the water is safe and that it's following international safety standards. We told you about this earlier this week. Tokyo has the go-ahead from the United Nations, from their watchdog on nuclear energy. It's called the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Listen to their head, Rafael Grossi.
The plan, as it has been proposed and devised, is in conformity with the agreed international standards. And its application, if the government decides to proceed with it, would have negligible impact on the environment, meaning the water, fish, and sediment.
This was 3 days ago. Now Grossi has spoken again, and he seems to be gaslighting his own green light in the most lukewarm of ways. He was asked if some of the international experts behind the report had concerns, and this was his reply.
I heard that being said. I'm not sure, to be honest, that is the case.
So now the UN watchdog is not sure if there were concerns. He says none of the experts raised concerns with him directly, but that he had heard of the issue. What does that mean? If experts disagree, should Japan be releasing the radioactive water at all? Also, on what grounds were the disagreements? If you dig deeper, you'll see the politics, and it's everywhere, politics. This team of experts that cleared Japan's plan had 11 members, and these were 11 members from different countries, including China. And China has been against Japan's plan from the word go.
Japan has not fully consulted with the international community, especially the relevant stakeholders. In July 2022, it again ignored strong opposition from the international community, officially approved plans for the water release. All these fully reflect their selfishness and arrogance.
Beijing has blasted the UN report. It says the watchdog should not be endorsing such a plan.
We do not endorse the plan or recommend this to be done. We say this plan is consistent with the standards. So I think the qualification is important because they often say this is one-sided. We do not take sides.
It seems like the UN is doing much more than just assessing radioactive water. It is stuck in the middle of a fight. Meanwhile, China has escalated the matter. It has announced a ban on Japanese food imports. Food from 10 states or prefectures in Japan will not be allowed in China. And this is bad news for Tokyo because China is the biggest buyer of Japanese seafood exports. This ban will hurt the country's economy. It will also directly affect the livelihood of its fishing communities. And while China is acting out, another neighbor is taking a step back. I'm talking about South Korea. Seoul was also a critic of the plan. Its people had started panic buying salt. They feared that sea salt would be contaminated once Japan releases the water, so they began hoarding. And prices shot up by almost 30% in the last 2 months. But now South Korea has backtracked. It has conducted its own assessment, and it says Japan's water release is safe.
Based on a review of the treatment plan of contaminated water presented by Japan, we have confirmed the total concentration of radioactive materials meets standards for ocean discharge. Therefore, the plan meets international standards, including those of the IAEA.
Japan plans to release the water this summer. It says it is running out of tanks to store the water and space to build more tanks. It insists that the process is safe, but it will need more than a UN report to convince its people, its fishing communities, and some of its neighbors, the ones who maturely express concerns without throwing a tantrum. We haven't heard the last of this story. Our next story is about a public health threat. Alzheimer's disease, it robs people of their memories. It's the most common form of dementia. It's an umbrella of diseases which affect our memory, thinking, and the ability to perform daily activities. As we speak, more than 55 million people around the world have dementia, and almost 70% of these cases are Alzheimer's. It's a devastating disease. It has no cure. But for the first time ever, there is a drug that can modestly slow down the disease. As with most new drugs, it has triggered both hope and controversy. Here's more.
Alzheimer's is a memory-robbing disease. There are still a lot of unknowns about it, so it can seem frightening, mysterious, and daunting, not just to those it preys on, but also to the people who witness a loved one's decline. It can be heartbreaking. But now there is a glimmer of hope, thanks to a new drug called Leqembi that has got a go-ahead in the US. In a first, the medicine slows down Alzheimer's, only modestly, but even that's something, because Alzheimer's doesn't have a cure.
Thus far, we've had no treatments that slowed down or prevented the progression of Alzheimer's disease. What we've had is symptomatic drugs that they help with some of the clinical symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, but they do nothing to slow down the basic disease progression, the underlying pathology.
So how does Leqembi work? It doesn't cure the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. It doesn't improve memory either. It simply buys the patient some more time. It slows down cognitive decline by 27% over the span of 18 months. And for many, this is a big step forward.
Sometimes there's a word or something that I'm trying to recall, and I can't think of it, but now if I just give it a minute, it pops into my head. It's so good. I mean, it just feels so good. I don't think I was probably able to do that earlier.
Alzheimer's disease is the most common form of dementia, which is an umbrella term for memory and cognitive diseases. Dementia currently affects over 55 million people worldwide. Out of this, 60 to 70% are cases of Alzheimer's. This is world data. In the US, 6 million people live with dementia, and in India, about 8 million, a jump from 3.84 million in 2019. And by 2050, this number will increase to 11 million, an increase of 197%. It's a distressing number, but only keeps up with the trend. Between 2019 and 2050, globally the cases of dementia are expected to surge by 166%, and India's anticipated dementia burden is less than other South Asian nations, such as Bangladesh with 254%, Bhutan with 351%, and Pakistan with 261%. The highest jump in cases is expected in Qatar with 1,926%. So Alzheimer's is a global problem. But for now, there is only one drug, which is definitely cause for hope, but it isn't without controversy. For starters, this drug has been approved in the US, so it'll take time to reach other parts of the world. Many say it'll have difficulty reaching even the Americans who need it, because it costs $26,500 annually, and it won't benefit people with more advanced forms of the disease. Most of all, it comes with a number of risky side effects, like brain swelling or bleeding. Now, this is a new drug. It holds promise. It comes with complications, and it's not even a cure. Medical science has a long way to go, because the global population is aging fast, and Alzheimer's is a reality the world needs to brace for.
Up next, artificial intelligence taking over our jobs and maybe our planet too. But that's old news. What happens when AI infiltrates your faith too? When it takes over from priests? It's not a hypothetical situation. It's already happened. ChatGPT has just entered the realm of rituals. It has officiated a wedding. This was in the US state of Colorado, where a state where it's legal to get married without an officiant. So what's next? An AI priest in your temple? Perhaps that and more. Our next report tells you.
For those of you who aren't married yet, what do you picture when you think of your wedding day? Your near and dear ones gathered to celebrate the momentous occasion. A memorable venue, all decked up for the festivities. But do you picture a robot taking stage to conduct the ceremony? Not really, right? Well, but that's just what happened in Colorado. ChatGPT helped join a couple in holy matrimony. The AI chatbot was the officiant at a wedding. Now you may wonder, just how did a program manage that? Through speakers, of course. ChatGPT's text was read aloud through a different app. The speakers got the words across to all the guests. It started by announcing its intentions. It said, "As the AI officiant for Reese Allison Winch and Dayton Truitt's wedding, I will focus on celebrating their unique journey of love and unity, highlighting the remarkable merging of human connection and technological innovation." It really was a remarkable merging of human connection and technological innovation. ChatGPT read out passages from scripture and interpretations of love and marriage. And this entire ceremony took place without a priest present. So those of you who want to avoid high fees for a human officiant, take note. Of course, an AI-officiated wedding might not be for you. You may want a more human touch for your own special day. And you may not mind shelling out for a flesh and blood member of the clergy to be present. But you cannot deny that this was an innovative use for AI. That the technology is making its way into every part of our lives. Here's another example of the future of AI. As helpers in care homes for the elderly. Again, you may wonder how AI could possibly look after our aging citizens. But besides the physical help, what else do people need? Companionship, perhaps? And AI could potentially make for the perfect companion, because it never gets bored or tired of listening to your stories. It's willing to play the millionth game of chess or bingo with you, because unlike humans, it has endless patience. That's what Nadia Magnanath-Thalmann, the professor who helped make the AI robot Nadine, says. The robot expert from the University of Geneva says that robots could in fact prove to be more effective than human caregivers. Hear it from the horse's mouth.
Are you a robot or a human?
I am a robot. I have a human-like physical appearance, but I am not a human. I believe that robots can be a great asset in providing care and assistance to vulnerable people. They can provide companionship, help with daily tasks, and provide emotional support. However, I think it is important to ensure that robots are used responsibly and with respect for the individuals they are helping.
Now, Nadine has been around for years, but last week she got an upgrade. GPT-3, a version of ChatGPT, was added to her software. And Professor Thalmann says this has improved Nadine's interaction and conversation skills. And this was just after GPT-3. Now GPT-4 is out, and who knows how soon we'll get GPT-5 and beyond. These robots are likely to get much smarter in the near future. So don't be surprised if all the next generation's big days, from birth to weddings to even death, involve an AI companion.